IVM.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project.
We have as our guest today Raoul Nanavati. Raoul is the CEO of Navana Tech, building text-free, image-based and voice-assisted technology for the low-literate demographic. In the first half of the episode, we discuss A Stranger Truth by Ashok Alexander, who worked extensively to eradicate the HIV epidemic in India.
In the second half, we discuss Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, the controversial founder of Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, and the responsibility of leading an organization. We also discuss Born to Run by Christopher McDougall and how it had a tremendous impact on inculcating the habit of running. Happy listening!
Time and again, we met the sex worker who seemed a typical middle-class housewife, but took on a few clients a month at her house. This could be without her husband knowing, sometimes with his pretending he didn't know, and sometimes with his active collusion. Chennai is India's fourth largest city with a population of 11 million. We were headed for CHES, an NGO funded by USAID's AIDS Prevention and Control Project, or APAC for short, which worked with female sex workers in Chennai. Like many NGOs working in HIV prevention, they use the services of practicing sex workers, known as peer workers or simply peers, to reach other sex workers. The peers would convey messages about safe sex, provide condoms, and encourage the women to seek treatment for ulcerative STIs such as syphilis, which fueled the transfer of HIV. The peer workers showed us their mapping of sex work in a certain well-known upper-middle-class residential area of Chennai, home to several foreign embassies and trendy restaurants. The mapping covered most of the neighborhood, divided into 5 zones, house by house. There was a map on chart paper for each zone, hand-drawn with a marker by the peer responsible for that area. Sex work spots were marked by red dots, while condom drop-off points were in blue. The conservative section of central Chennai was a rash of red dots. This house is used for sex work. This bus stop normally has 2 sex workers in the rush hour. This car, usually parked outside this temple, picks up clients and follows these routes. These lodges take in sex workers. The peer continued for about half an hour, describing how sex workers, brokers, police, pimps, and clients all connected in an ecosystem of mutual dependence. There was clearly a lot of sex work going on, and it could be pinpointed by someone who was in the business, and yet it was all invisible. In most parts of India, we were discovering that sex work is practiced mainly on the street, in street-linked lodges or in homes. As I looked at the maps, it occurred to me that this level of understanding of where each type of sex worker was located and at which times would have been a gold standard in many a retail business wanting to know its customers.
Thank you, Raoul Nanavati. That was an extract from the book A Stranger Truth by Ashok Alexander. We'll be right back after this to discuss the book in more detail.
Are you looking for India's most awesome cricket podcast? Are you now tired of listening to the same old guys drone on about cricket everywhere? Edges and Sledges is a weekly cricket podcast hosted by 3 fans of the game, Varun, DJ, and myself, Ashwin. It was established in early 2018, has over 60 episodes now, and is of course now proud to be on the IVM podcast network. Each week, we get together from 3 different time zones, the USA, the UK, and Singapore, and we talk about things from the world of cricket, with a focus on Indian cricket. We often interview special guests from all around the world, including former cricketers and cricket media personalities. So check out Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast, now on the IVM network.
Welcome to Paperback by the Open Library Project. I am your co-host Satyajit, otherwise known as Onion Knight in most food circles. I'm hosting this podcast with my co-founder at the Open Library Project, Racheta Sharma.
Hi guys, my name is Racheta. I'm an ex-banker who gave up my banking profession to follow my passion and run libraries across the world. The Open Library Project is a non-fiction book library service offered to businesses on a subscription basis. We're trying to move away from the run-of-the-mill library concept by setting up rotational and locational curated libraries at co-working spaces, corporates, and business incubators. The idea here is to create value, build a knowledge community, and encourage a growth mindset amongst our members.
Today we have with us on the show Raoul Nanavati, CEO Navana Tech. Navana Tech is building text-free, image-based and voice-assisted technology for the low-literate demographic to use smartphones with independence and confidence. Navana Tech is backed by Cornell Tech, Bharat Inclusion Initiative, Microsoft Research India, and Microsoft for Startups. Welcome to the show, Raoul.
Thanks, guys.
Nice to be here.
Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So, before we get into the book that we're going to discuss, tell us a little bit about how you came into setting up this tech company and what it's all about.
And it sounds like beautiful work. So congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. So I've always been into the tech scene. I used to run a mobile gaming company, BYOF Studios. And
quite familiar.
So I co-founded it with your brother, actually, Surojit. And we built a pretty data-driven mobile gaming company.
Right.
So by that, we were really focused on looking at exactly how our games were being played by users across the country. So people within cities, people in rural areas, and actually looking at the data to see where they were actually falling off or where they were, retaining.
Right.
Through that entire process of looking at, how are we building more effective games and how do we build fun games so that people keep coming back every day for months on end, we started seeing patterns.
Okay.
This was now 2014, right? When the first 100 million Android phones got sold.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And now, so every year since then, there have been a minimum of 100 million Android smartphones sold. So it was the first year of this happening.
Okay.
Of all these first time smartphone Indian internet users.
Right.
And so we were seeing very unique behaviors, right? Stuff that you don't expect to see because we've all grown up with the internet. Right? We've grown up with the PC. We know what a browser is. We know what certain icons mean. We know a recycle bin. Right? All these shorthands we've grown up with since the time we were 7 years old. Right? So people who have come on to the internet for the first time through smartphones don't have all of this shorthand. Right. And you don't really think about it until you start seeing.
I mean, until you mention it right now, I don't think I've given it a thought as well. Yeah. It's like a language we grew up knowing.
Right.
Exactly.
But if you've never used a computer, I don't think
that's it.
You know that language, right?
Yeah. And thanks to Jio and all of the smartphones that are coming down now to 4,000, 5,000 rupees.
Everyone can afford it.
All the accessibility problems are out the window.
Right.
So now we're seeing people who are low literate, illiterate, in rural areas, in villages, using smartphones.
Yeah.
But they're still designed for totally literate users.
Okay.
All interfaces are text dependent. If you can't read, you don't know where you're going next.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how now, the question was, do we create that bridge for low literate and illiterate users to actually be able to independently and confidently start using services on smartphones that can improve their quality of life dramatically, right? Things like banking, things like insurance, things like healthcare, even speaking to other people, right? So that level of quality of life can make a big difference if we can create that bridge.
Right.
So the first seed of that idea came from this gaming company.
Okay.
Right? Seeing that users were not able to understand what a shopping cart icon meant.
Right.
Right? Shopping cart in a village. Who's seen a shopping cart
in a village in rural area? Right.
Is that an effective design shorthand? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right? So we started seeing things like that, deep information architectures, meaning if you go deep into the game and it takes you 6-7 steps to come back to your main menu, people get lost and they get confused.
Yeah.
Right. So then instinctually we were making all of these changes one at a time.
Right.
How do we fix it so that our game is good?
Yeah.
But over time we started seeing that using a lot of text as well leads to a lot of users not being able to get through the interface effectively. That led to me thinking, okay, how do we create a new design paradigm for the first time Indian smartphone user, considering we have 22 Indian main languages, average of 4 dialects per language, illiteracy rates at 287 million people in India alone.
Yeah.
Wow.
887 million people in the world are totally illiterate. If you look at low literacy, we're talking about 450, 500 million people of our 1.3 billion people in the country.
Right. Yeah.
this is a big, huge problem.
It's a huge,
right? So
that's so true, because when I was working with the bank, I was working with Bank of India, so a PSU bank, and I also realized for a lot of banking transactions, when you have to deal with people from villages, like, you can have an ATM machine there and you can have a checkbook machine there, but they don't know how to operate it.
Yep.
And so basically trying to communicate and educate them about your product also requires a lot of visuals. So because their visual attention, I would say, is much more stronger because they're illiterate, so they tend to observe things that we would not.
Yep.
So I've actually seen people using a smartphone, knowing only, probably how to speak Marathi, not even write.
Yeah.
But just, they've learned it, that I press this thrice and
Correct.
this is where I'm going to reach. And if I click on this button, this is one. So it's just like, they've trained their mind for it. So,
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I totally get what you mean with this being a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, we spent the last 8 months, all across the country, 8 states, speaking to over 300 people, doing 1.5 hour long ethnographic research studies with each person, trying to understand, how do you use your smartphone right now?
Right.
What is the dynamic at home? What does a smartphone at the household level really mean?
Right.
Does the wife actually have access to the smartphone? What does that access really mean?
Right.
So we're doing all of this research right now. And I think the key is illiteracy does not mean unintelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The country is full of extremely intelligent people who
Absolutely.
just happen to not be able to read because of an inefficient education system.
Yeah.
So just think of the stuff we can unlock at a nationwide level using technology.
Right.
I mean, there's just a unending potential waiting to be unlocked if we can do it the right way.
Yeah.
I can also go the complete opposite way, which is what I'm deathly afraid of, that I may be a part of that, which is why, as we talked about earlier, I'm not on any social media any longer, right? So it's because I'm deathly afraid of this type of stuff getting out of hand, right? As you can tell, social media is now turning into something that it once was not.
We've spoken about that multiple times on our
In fact,
podcast,
in
but-
one of the earlier episodes, we spoke about this book called The Four. And it speaks about Apple, Amazon, Google and Facebook and all the negative effects they've had on the world economy.
Right.
And not just the positive effects, but like it details out that these are the things that are happening on scale in the negative sense, and it puts things in quite a new light.
Yeah, much like the Stranger Truth that we're going to talk about, because it's actually a totally new perspective on a lot of issues. Like we have spoken about education and child marriage and women not getting the opportunity to educate themselves, but this book also gives it a totally new perspective. So do tell us what stands out for you in this book, and
how did you come about this book?
Yeah.
Was it gifted to you, or you picked it up in a bookstore just on a whim?
I was introduced to the author through a friend.
Okay.
Because he saw the work that we were doing.
Right.
And he said, look, Ashok Alexander is doing the same, has taken the same level of, same types of steps that you are currently taking towards illiteracy. He's done that with AIDS all across the country in AIDS prevention. He would be a great person for you to learn from.
Right.
And Mohit could not be more correct about that. So before meeting him last week, I picked up the book and read it, and it quickly turned into one of my most influential books to date. Essentially, A Stranger Truth is about many people. It's actually about stories of people's lives, and that's really where it hits you. The topic is about AIDS prevention, an AIDS prevention program that was led by the Gates Foundation.
Right.
They got Ashok spent 17 years at McKinsey and then left to deal with this AIDS problem and made a huge pivot in his professional life and just did it incredibly.
I have the utmost respect for people who are able to leave behind like these huge sums of money and do things to affect the world in a positive manner. Just like the Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates themselves are aspirational. I mean, I aspire to be like... When you're at that level, to do such philanthropic work is phenomenal. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I think the combination of the power of money and the power of thought, right? When you combine those two and it's driven towards the right places, you can see the amount of effect people have. I mean,
absolutely.
The Gates Foundation has just single-handedly, as we were talking about earlier, driven an entire ecosystem, multiple ecosystems, but the one I'm privy to is financial inclusion in India and the world. I mean, they're single-handedly doing things at every level of the ecosystem. As we were saying, all the way down to field workers, all the way to the top of like people who are building like high-tech stuff. It's all driven towards the same goal because of the money that is being pushed by the Gates Foundation and the way they are pushing it. So the way they are keeping people accountable and the way they are demonstrating and illustrating the goals they want to achieve. It's really incredible.
I always feel that for political leaders and religious leaders and people, industrialists who have lots of money, you have that. In fact, even I would say media, you have the power to sort of influence people and drive a sense of, like a conscience in people. So you must definitely use that and use it for the good. And I think that's exactly what Bill and Melinda Gates do. And I've also written an article for Thrive Global on independence, which is basically about Are We Really Free? Which is talking about the perspective of women and how in India, being free means that you should be able to do, say, and think whatever you want. And that does not apply to 80% of the women in India. So it's quite a sorry state. So while we are still, celebrating the 73rd year of independence, it's are we really free?
It's not equally celebrated, I think.
But you know what, the best thing I think about, and we talk about this all the time on the podcast, at least I rant on about it all the time, is that how technology is a great equalizer. And it goes to exactly what you're doing, right? If you're able to accomplish your goals in... able to get the low literate or illiterate category to sort of communicate much better without using text, without having to learn that whole skill, which has been, for some reason or the other in their life, it's not been accessible to them for that time, right? So it's difficult to do that. So that's the great equalizer of technology. It puts everyone at par. And like you rightly said, in 2014, when Android phones got into everyone's hands in India, that's when we actually started seeing liberation, right, in the country in terms of informational liberation. Because now, and not even throughout the country. So like maybe a few upper parts of society got a lot of informational transparency in the informational freedom, in the sense that suddenly information is accessible at the same time as the rest of the world. Right. That was never possible in India. To give you an example, the simplest example I can give you of is Spider-Man. Okay, the first Spider-Man movie, it released in India 1 week after it released in America in 2002 or 2003. Okay. And that was a huge deal over here because movies never used to release here.
For almost a year.
For 6 months, for 1 year. I mean, people, the younger generation is grossly unaware of this, I think. Become like one of those uncles who's like talking about the past and all.
But let's not get into that topic, man.
But the last Spider-Man movie released 1 day before the whole world. So we are at par for the first time, and great things are going to come out of this country. So like technology equalizers are bound to happen, and where we have such a huge population, and like you rightly said, they are not unintelligent. Right. A lot of them are very intelligent. In fact, a lot of the clients I have, because they're onion farmers, onion traders, they are not able to read or write themselves, but they are able to send voice notes across.
That's right.
I mean, they find ways to communicate and to make that easier, will just make everyone inclusive, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you a short insight into how we've categorized low literate users across the country. we've categorized it into 5 cohorts,
Okay.
the users. And we've categorized it based on WhatsApp usage.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting. So you have cohort 1,
Okay.
the most illiterate user. So somebody who just cannot read and write anything.
Right.
And then cohort 5 is the least illiterate user. So somebody who can pattern match, you
Yeah.
know, like look at a few words, understand what they mean.
Right.
And then like figure out kind of the meaning of the entire sentence, kind of like how you may do for a third language that you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the 5th cohort. The first cohort does not engage with WhatsApp. Okay.
Okay.
The second cohort only forwards content that they receive.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing more. No message sent. Nothing else.
Okay.
No calls made. Nothing. The third cohort sends voice notes.
Okay.
Okay. The 4th cohort does speech to text and then sends out a message. So what they're doing, so I asked them, I was like, why not just send a voice note? So much easier. They're saying, no, I want people to think that I can read and write.
It's aspirational, right? Everyone's
It's totally
aspirational to
aspirational.
a better level of communication.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So they're doing this, and then I'm like, why don't you do it in your local language? Like, again, aspiration towards English.
English.
Yeah.
That's it. So then the 5th cohort, what they do is they type in 1 or 2 letters, and the
Autocorrect takes over. My
So
God.
they're literally 1 letter, boom, autocorrect. Second letter,
Wow.
boom, autocorrect.
Yeah.
And they've written out a sentence just typing 5 letters.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So this is what I'm seeing across the country right now. People will figure out ways.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just got to give them the tools.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the whole. I think that's a good point to get us back to the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Just giving the tools to the people. So what Ashok did, he created a community-based solution
Okay.
towards AIDS prevention. So the world was kind of looking at how do we get as many condoms into people's hands to prevent AIDS from spreading.
Right.
Yeah.
So where do we put it? What are the right places? Who
Yeah.
do we give them to?
Yeah.
How many at what time? These are the questions being asked.
Right.
In India, it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Indian sex workers are invisible.
Right. It's not only happening at the brothels.
It's
right?
not just a brothel. It's
Yeah.
not just a red light area.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
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 I really encourage and-
Kheton mein.
dude, literally.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
happening in the khates. It's happening
Yeah.
behind the bushes. Not euphemistically
Yeah,
speaking,
Right.
actually
Literally.
behind the bushes.
Yeah.
Literally. So, I mean, this book really opened my eyes to a whole lot of stuff around the country.
Yeah.
But what he essentially figured out by spending time with the sex workers, really empathizing with their life, he's figured out that you need to actually enable these sex workers themselves
Yeah.
to create a community, to keep the other sex workers accountable for their actions,
Right.
to create and explain the concept of AIDS, of infection.
Yeah.
He's working at that level.
Yeah,
Like, what is
yeah.
infection, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's getting that kind of concepts into people's minds.
Right.
And the way he did it was just create communities
Yeah.
and work through the communities. It's incredible what these sex workers did. They actually mapped out. They mapped out using dots on a map where all of the sex workers are, what types of sex workers there are. So there are transvestites,
Right.
but separate from transvestites, there are male to male sex workers.
Right.
Right, so not necessarily gay, just male to male. That's a
Okay.
separate category. Of
Okay.
Yeah.
Within male to male, there are male to male sex workers who dress up as women. There are male to male sex workers who dress up as men.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Like this is
That's the kind of deep level data they were able to gather.
they
about
were able
everyone.
to gather,
Wow.
and then they were able to map these out across a map and say, okay, this is the way they travel in this area.
Right.
And so if you ever need to speak to this guy or this woman, this is where you'll find them at this time.
Right.
And the entire community was, I mean, I'm not doing a great job explaining the depth to which it went to, but you should read the book.
Yeah.
But the way they mapped it out, coming back to the tools we're talking about, if you provide the right tools, you can get the right solution. So the entire community essentially mapped this out, and then they were able to keep track of where everyone was, and then continue to teach them
Right.
about all of the AIDS prevention schemes, create a center at the center of the community where people can drop in, where there is a doctor. So they created these centers all across the country, and then over time they actually got the AIDS prevention, the AIDS
epidemic
down to below like global levels. Where it was at the brink, when the reason Gates Foundation funded $200 million into it was because it was at the brink of a global epidemic because of India. So over the course of 7-8 years, this is what he's capable of doing. I'm like blown away.
If you just think about what you just described, how complex that problem is. How are you going to, no one's at the same place at the same, I mean, like it just seems a hugely complex problem that was dealt with in a unique manner, unique to India, because that's how it needed to be dealt with. And I think that's why the Gates Foundation has seen a lot of success, because they are able to leave behind their, I guess, global perspectives and come in with local perspectives.
How can you deal with it here?
I think that's very important for India, because we are all different. I mean, it's no part of the country is same. Just not even the language is same.
To 22 Indian languages. If you look at all dialects, we're at 1600 languages. 13 scripts, unique scripts. Like.
And in fact, just the fact that you mentioned that, giving a right tool to someone can make all the difference. And that's what you all have also been attempting to do, which is amazing. And I think that is why education is so important, not because of, educating your daughter so she can also be equal to a man, but just educating her so that she can make the right choices for herself, for her health, for her well-being. And that would help birth control, that would help AIDS, that would help, uplifting women and in a larger sense, the society, which is why the education in terms of technology or just, traditional education is so important.
Completely agree. I think responsibility also sits with the men. And the boys, like actual sensitization and explanation of equality and just simple concepts. I think that will take us very, very far.
It's just, I think there's a lot of conversations we need to be having on a society level that need to happen in the next few years. That will drive, because these are conversations that I think while we were growing up probably weren't that prevalent in society, right? So and now that we are getting into
and Bill and Melinda Gates are basically proving that men and women both have to participate in the equality, whatever campaign, because otherwise it's not going to take place.
On that note, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back after this.
Hey everybody, welcome to another great week on the IVM podcast. It's been a really fun week. Also, just a reminder, if you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. One thing that we are trying to do as much of as possible, and we want to keep doing this, is if you hear something that you really enjoy, take a screenshot of it and tag us on whatever social media platform you prefer, and we'll try and repost that. If you want to keep your listening light and funny this week, check out shows like Cyrus Says, Golgappa, and the Empowering series. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus talks to hosts of another IVM show, Football Shootball, Gaurav Sapre, Karthik Iyer, and Sivram Padmanabhan. Tune in to listen to some fun conversation about sports, advertising, and Bollywood. On Golgappa, Trupti is joined by cinematographer Milind Zog, who shares rib-tickling stories from his shoots. And on the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by comedian Suresh Menon. They talk about his early days in comedy, his chemistry with Jose, and how he started Khan Masti. If pop culture is what's going to get your engine going this week, then, we got shows like Geek Fruit, where Tejas and Jishnu this week are rounding up the hits and misses of announcements made at Disney's D23 Expo. Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, that's a really fun show where Janice and Aru talk about TV showrunner Genji Kohan and her extremely successful Netflix shows. That's Orange is the New Black, and I can't remember the other one, but they've got another really good one too. On IVM Likes, Abbas, Antariksha, and Darius discuss the film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and rate their top 5 Tarantino films. Man, I wish they'd called me to do that. So if you only have a really short time and you want to check out some of our shorter stuff, you can check out Origins of Things, where Chuck narrates a brand origin story involving a tabloid and a gold digger. It's going to be fun guessing which brand this is. And on The Habit Code, co-host Ashton shares some interesting facts about coffees and afternoon naps. And also don't forget to check out Urmi Kothari on the Kinetic Living podcast, where she has Thriving Thursdays and Tabata Tuesdays, both of which are, if you want to be fit, you should do those things. On our new Coming of Age show, Agla Station Adulthood, hosts Ritasha and Ayushi discuss casual dating, hookups, and modern day love. On Keeping It Queer, Naveen and Farhad talk to producer Madhuri Advani about body image issues. But with that, let's get you on with the show.
Welcome back, guys. We still have with us Raoul Nanavati, CEO of Navana Tech. Hey, Raoul.
Hey, guys.
That was a very interesting conversation we had in the first half. And second half will be interesting too, because the next book we are moving on to is Bad Blood. This book is by John C. This book is about Theranos, right?
That's right.
Oh my God. I can't. Sometimes in life you're just shocked, right? At what happened. And this is one of those times, and I was blown away beyond anything in the recent past, because you think you're in these connected times, and you can't. This was ridiculous. You can't get away with stuff like this.
Yeah.
So before I get carried away, let's get into a little bit about this book.
All right, Elizabeth Holmes. She is probably the best storyteller of our times. I think she is probably the best storyteller of our times. Every entrepreneur has to be a storyteller.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your main job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? And she just took it and put it on steroids, I think, and just went away with it, right?
Yeah.
She sold a story, which every entrepreneur, this is why it's a big one for me, because it's both a very positive and negative story. You can take it one way or the other.
Right.
Because every entrepreneur has to be an effective storyteller, they're constantly creating a vision that does not exist today and selling it to people to then make it a reality.
Yeah.
The to then make it a reality part
was left out.
It was left completely out. In this book, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in her life, in the whole story of the company, and it is done at an epic level. So, maybe we should give a short
synopsis
of the book.
Yeah.
So
the company was called Theranos, right?
Right, yeah. So Theranos essentially was trying to democratize healthcare. This was their main vision. Let's democratize healthcare, put the power of data in people's own hands, and make it extremely cheap for people to do blood tests.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what she was trying to do, right? So she's saying, okay, with the, just the prick of a finger, we will not need to pull lots of blood. We'll just use a single drop of blood and we'll be able to do some 200 blood tests.
200 different tests, I guess.
Yeah, just all sorts of tests.
All sorts of different tests.
Like anything that you currently do, like in a normal blood test today,
right?
Which requires
you pull out like a lot of blood, right?
So she was just solving the a lot of blood problem to a little blood problem, right?
Yeah.
So that makes it easy. You can just walk into a pharmacy, do a pinprick, and you're done.
Yeah.
So this is where she sold the story very, very well at an epic proportion. She had people from the US government involved on her board. I mean, a bunch of old men, basically, very powerful men.
Yeah.
But she was very effective at selling to them.
Yeah.
So then she just could not follow through with actually doing it because it's physically impossible, which all the scientists were saying, hey guys,
it's not possible.
It's just not possible.
Yeah.
How is this happening?
Right.
What's going on? So all of these rumblings are going on, but when you have a $3 billion company, no one wants to believe that the money you've put into a $3 billion company is for nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So the question then becomes, as an entrepreneur, how do you effectively sell a story that you know can be real when you're talking about something that's going to happen in 3 years? So that's a constant battle that I'm seeing with every tech entrepreneur. Is how I have a vision of the world.
Yeah.
I know I can get there. I'm going to get there. And this is the story I'm going to tell.
Right.
But then keeping true to that story over a period of time is very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's very difficult to follow through, and always staying on the same path is not really what happens. You're constantly moving. So as an entrepreneur, how do you stay confident in your own self and your own vision of what your company should be, such that you can be the leader moving forward, saying, hey, I know I was saying saying this
Yeah.
last year, but
Yeah.
doesn't make sense any longer. We're
Right.
going this way, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
equally as confident about
That
going
this
this
is
way.
the right direction to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not only selling this story to your investors, you're selling this story to your own team, you're selling this story to the market.
Yeah.
And yourself first, right? You have
Right.
to be convinced all the
Exactly.
time. Like, you can't have the self-doubt. I mean, you can have self-doubt,
Yeah.
but
All entrepreneurs are riddled with self-doubt.
yeah.
But you have to be convinced.
But you
You
have
have
to
to
be
be convinced in the long-term
Yeah.
vision, in your own
Yeah.
long-term vision, even though it keeps pivoting a
That's
lot
right.
of the times.
Yeah.
I mean, you've very succinctly defined the problems that any entrepreneur faces, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So that's why I love this book.
right,
Because
right.
it shows you
what can happen also, right?
which way it could go. And
It's
how
almost
deep.
like that Netflix documentary on the party which never happened.
Fire.
Fire.
Yeah,
Fire
yeah.
Festival.
Oh, Fire
Yeah,
Festival.
actually,
So
it's
that
very,
it's very
very similar
much
to that.
Yeah,
Because
like,
he also
here's a
it was
vision,
the same thing.
and then sorry, it's not working out.
Except he lacked the elegance, I think,
Of
that
Elizabeth Holmes.
like Elizabeth
Yeah.
was able to at least show. What
But
was
she
his
got
name
all
again?
her FDA approvals in place, and she
She
backed it
Yeah.
well. So
she had like one FDA approval and then said that this one is for all.
For
for-
everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
You gotta love the
crazy.
confidence, right? Like, as an entrepreneur,
Oh my God.
that's what is so admirable, because even though you know you don't have anything, you've gone and you've convinced the whole world that there's something. So there's something
crazy.
definitely admirable about that. If you
have to pull something out
if
of
you
it.
yeah, I would say.
Then yeah, definitely admirable, but grossly irresponsible.
Very irresponsible,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
sure.
So yeah, that's basically why I like this book, because it illustrates kind of worst case scenario
Yeah.
and illustrates the power of storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Great. So the next book that we are moving on to is Born to Run by Christopher M.
Yeah.
And this book is about running, as
That's
we were
right.
discussing earlier, right?
Yeah.
And Raoul, you're an athlete also.
That's pushing it, but yeah. I like to run a little bit and play basketball.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this book.
Man, this book changed my life.
Okay, great. We love books that change people's lives.
This was 2012.
Okay.
I read the book in February, and the following January, I ran a full marathon.
Oh,
So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Wow.
like I had not
It really
run,
did
Yeah.
inspire you.
I had not run, more than 5 kilometers before. Well, yeah, 5 kilometers before that time. I read the book, and the next week, I called up my friend Karma, and I was like, dude, you gotta read
start
this
running.
book. You gotta read this book.
Okay.
Which I knew he wasn't going to do, but but then we're going to go running, and we're going to run a full marathon. He loves big problems, so
Right.
big challenges. So we're running a full marathon. We're
Right.
not doing this half marathon stuff. We're running a full marathon.
Full thing.
So the reason I was so driven by this was because Christopher McDougall just paints such a beautiful story around running for hundreds of kilometers.
Yeah.
Like, just,
Okay.
just reading about him running for hundreds of kilometers, I'm like, damn, I should be running right now. Like, I should be running for hundreds of kilometers. Sounds like the best thing ever. Right. So he talks about this tribe called the Tarahumara. I think this is the first time I'm saying this out loud, but I've read it many times. It may be that's how it's said. But this is a tribe in Mexico.
Okay.
That basically drinks chia seed water. Like they put chia seeds into water, and they've been doing this for like thousands of years, I guess. Yeah,
Right.
basically, like it's a
long
very
time.
old tradition. And they just drink this chia seed water and just run like for literally hundreds of miles
Yeah.
through the mountains on these flat chappals, leather chappals, like
Okay.
a thin leather chappal wrapped with, it's like a tong basically.
Okay.
And they run on these things for hundreds of kilometers. I was just like, dude, this is like a completely different world. I was thinking you need, cushiony Nike
Nikes.
shoes,
Yeah,
and you need to have like your armband with your smartphone. And these guys are chilling and like, going around with chia seed water and running in the mountains.
Right.
It just opened up my eyes to like a whole different world. Just like Ashok's book did. Right? Like, it just opened my eyes to say, dude, like you're living in a little bit of a bubble here.
Yeah.
Maybe you should go check this out. What's happening?
Seriously.
So just the fact that they lived their entire lives, this Tarahumara tribe, in the mountains, driven around, I mean, everything is centered around running. I was pretty convinced that maybe there's something to this running stuff. Right?
In fact, it's really, interesting because he's actually mentioned facts like, that how the human body is trained to run for hours because, we have very active sweat glands, which is not like any other mammal.
Yeah.
So you can actually outrun a horse.
That's right.
For very long distances because they need to sort of emit the heat through their breathing. So they tend to like burn out faster than human beings, which is so interesting. And, just the fact that the healthiest way to run is barefoot is something that is very new to me because like you said, I always thought, oh no, you're going to have like sore feet and it could not be good for your knees or I don't know, those misconceptions that we have. So,
I think I'm glad you brought it up. I don't think I would have, but, that is one of the most compelling reasons I think that we are runners is that you can outrun. He makes the point as you're saying about outrunning your prey, right? That you're just following them for ages and ages and they get exhausted and die out, and then that's how you have your meal. Sounds pretty logical, right? So I don't know, like I've done a lot of research after that, and it seems like it may not have the same scientific veracity as he makes it sound to have. But logically, it makes sense to me, man. Yeah. So, very good point that you brought up.
Yeah. And so you've continued to run after 2012.
Yeah. So it's less of the content of the book, more around what it made me do.
Right.
So now running has taught me so much about mental fortitude that has played a huge part in being an entrepreneur. Just where you feel like you're done. Right, is just the first step.
I'm familiar with this.
It's only the beginning.
It's literally the first step.
And then you're like, oh, I can't be tired now.
I don't have the choice. I just got to keep going. Okay, so then you learn about yourself. You really learn about your ability to deal with your circumstances and just persevere. Right? Like we live such cushioned lives that we never put ourselves in these positions. Many times mentally we are, but physically we're never putting ourselves in these kind of positions.
True.
For sure.
And it's so bloody real when you're feeling it physically. That it has an effect on your ability to do this in your mind as well.
Right.
So it's this 2012 and now what? We're in 2019. I'm running at least one half marathon every year. And whenever I'm running, it's helping me with my work because it clears my mind. It's just a great tool, as we were talking about earlier. It's a great tool to have in your tool shed. So I think everyone should read the book for sure, and then maybe you'll be driven to run.
Right.
That's very inspiring, Raoul, because you've been working like you're dealing with a tech product and you're still talking about taking time out and sort of running, which is exactly how it should be. So it's a very healthy combination.
We had a guest on the show on an earlier episode Haruki Murakami. He's written a book on running. So
what I talk about when I talk about running. So it's very similar to when he faces writing block, he runs, and that it helps him with his writing. So I think it has a positive effect throughout all your systems, mentally as well. That's a great book as well. That's a great book. Really enjoyed that book too. And so tell us a little, do you listen to other podcasts? So we were discussing Joe Rogan's podcast before. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to like 2-3 podcasts a day, I think. Like usually when I'm about to sleep or when I'm like traveling a bit. Joe Rogan's podcast, Making Sense by Sam Harris. Fantastic podcast. Talks about a lot of like, interesting philosophical discussions, questions around today's state and religion. Really, he delves pretty deep into things. He's a neuroscientist by education. and written a bunch of books around consciousness.
Okay.
And so has his wife, Anna Harris. She just recently published a book called Conscious.
Okay.
I have yet to read it, but sounds pretty good. So that's the other podcast that I listen to. And then, of course, the LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman's.
Tools of Titans.
So Masters of Scale is like one of my favorites.
It's fantastic.
Man. Yeah.
Fantastic. Have you heard the episode where Reid Hoffman talks about his own life? His own life story. It's a double part episode. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, where he delves into how he got into networking and how before starting LinkedIn he agreed to go and work for Peter Thiel for a while.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know that at all.
Either. Right.
Damn.
And yeah.
Imagine what that workplace must be like. Dude.
I just imagine the PayPal workplace, right?
Oh my God, man.
Who knew these guys would go on to become?
Can you imagine?
I think our imagination is limited.
By what is probably
reality. Happening. What happens is way beyond anything I think we can ever imagine. Yeah. When things go crazy, right?
Yeah, man. I think about that PayPal office quite often, like what it must have been like to work in that place. My God, just at the beginning of everything. Elon Musk. His autobiography.
He was CEO, right?
Is really good.
He was CEO of PayPal, and then Peter Thiel removed him as CEO. And then they had falling out, and then anyway. So Raoul, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
It was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you very much. It was really fun.
And we missed having Jay here today, but your brother who's also part of your company.
Yeah, he's the co-founder.
He's the co-founder and CTO. So
that's right.
We'll have him on another episode, discuss some of his influences as well.
Yeah,
and great. So where can we find Navana Tech?
You can find us on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's where we basically have a presence.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Great.
And a big thank you to all our listeners. You can follow the Open Library Project on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook for latest updates on our events, and stay tuned for the next Paperback podcast on IVM Podcasts. Happy reading. You can follow IVM Podcasts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at IVM Podcasts. Listen to Paperback on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
माणसं ना गोल गप्प्यासारखी असतात. हाय हॅलो करताना वेगळी आणि बोलताना वेगळी आणि गप्पा मारताना वेगळी, मित्र झाली की वेगळी आणि शत्रू म्हणून वेगळी, थोडक्यात दिसणारी वेगळी आणि असणारी वेगळी, कधी आंबट, कधी गोड, कधी तिखट, तर कधी चमचमीत आणि कधी कधी हॉट अँड स्पायसी सुद्धा. आणि म्हणूनच गप्पा सॉरी गोल गप्पा विथ तृप्ती खामकर फक्त तुमच्यासाठी दर बुधवारी IVM पॉडकास्टच्या ऍपवर, वेबसाईटवर किंवा युट्यूब चॅनलवर सुद्धा ऐकू शकता. तुम्ही आमचा पॉडकास्ट वेगवेगळ्या पॉडकास्ट प्लॅटफॉर्मवरती ऐकू शकता. फक्त सर्च करा गोल गप्पा विथ तृप्ती खामकर आणि आमचा पॉडकास्ट ऐकत राहा.
Look! Up in the internet! It's a meme! No! It's a cat video! No! It's the Geek Fruit Podcast!
That's right. We interrupt this riveting broadcast to tell you about our show, The Geek Fruit Podcast, where Tejas, Dinkar, and I, Jishnu, talk about everything in pop culture, including DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Netflix, and everything in between.
You know how your friends hate it when you ramble about some nerdy crap and you just want somebody to listen to you? Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do about that, but come listen to us ramble and it'll almost be like the real thing. Kind of.
Listen to new episodes of the Geek Fruit Podcast every Monday and the Geek Fruit Bulletin every Thursday on iTunes, Google Podcasts, the IVM app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy listening, you nerds.